Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Robinson, and you're listening to the best of The Robinson Show. Enjoy.
Now time to send things over to JaimeCoffee.
And now, let's meet the LSU Tiger starters. At 4'6'3" sophomore from Baltimore, Maryland, number 10, Angel Reese. At guard, a 5'10" freshman from Savannah, Georgia, number 4, Roxanne Johnson. And guard, a 5'6" fifth-year senior from Beaumont, Texas, number 45, Alexis Morris. And now let's meet the starters for the Iowa Hawkeyes. At center, a 6'3" grad student from Watertown, Minnesota, number 25, Monica Silano. And guard, a 5'9" senior from Cincinnati, Ohio, number 24, Gabby Marshall. And at guard, a 6' junior from West Des Moines, Iowa, number 22, Caitlin Clark. And introducing the head coaches for the LSU Tigers, Kim Mulkey. And for the Iowa Hawkeyes, Lisa Lunar.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the program. That audio was courtesy of ABC Sports, ESPN, and the Walt Disney Company, and that was JaimeCoffee announcing the LSU and Iowa starting lineups for the 2023 NCAA Women's Basketball National Championship that took place on April the 2nd of 2023 at the American Airlines Center in Dallas, Texas. And, of course, you heard Jaime doing her thing, and we're going to talk to her more about just important events that she's worked on, including her introduction to broadcasting, also public address announcing, and much more. Let's welcome her to the program. She is an acclaimed public address announcer for many events, many leagues such as the NBA, the WNBA, Women's College World Series, just to name a few. Indeed, a broadcast professional. Let's welcome her to the program, JaimeCoffee. Hey, Jaime, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us on the program. So before we talk about your career in broadcasting and being introduced to public address announcing, every story has a beginning. What was your upbringing like?
You know, my love of broadcast and entertaining kind of started at a very young age. I remember as a child interviewing my friends with my tape recorder long before we had digital and all that other good stuff, but it was literally my little tape recorder, and I would do these radio shows, most of them probably cooking shows, because you can hear my parents yelling at me in the background that something's burning. But I actually even talked before I walk. So I earned the nickname as a child of Motor Mouth. And who knew that mouth was going to help propel me to a national stage like you just heard there. NCAA, I can't believe I saw the ratings for the women's final, and it was like 9.9 million. So that Motor Mouth put me in front of millions of people, and it's taken me through a career that's extended decades.
The numbers are indeed phenomenal for that game that had taken place, over 9 million watching. It goes to show you that women's sports has come a long way, and it's going to continue to grow, hopefully continuing on this momentum shift. And it's definitely put you in the forefront, as well as you mentioned, to a very rewarding and still a very productive career. And I just want to ask you now, you mentioned about your upbringing and you mentioned about interviewing people and particularly your parents, Corda, learning to talk before you walk. And so your introduction to broadcasting, what was the moment that you realized was like, you know what, I can do this as a career? Like, what was that moment or moments when you were like, okay, this is something serious. I've got these gifts, these skills, these talents, and that abilities, and I just need to maximize it and take it to the next level. So what was your formal introduction to broadcasting like?
You know, I always kind of knew what I wanted to do as a kid to some degree. I originally thought I wanted to be a television news anchor. So I went to school. Right out of high school, I went to Fresno State, and I got a degree in journalism with an emphasis in radio, TV news. And during my senior year of college, I did an internship at a local television station in Fresno, and I followed around some reporters as part of that internship. And so I really, truly thought that I wanted to be in TV news somehow. But when I graduated, the TV station that I had interned for, they had a radio station as well. It was an all-news radio station. It was in Fresno, California. And I was offered a position there, and it paid $5 an hour. And I'm thinking, I have a college degree, and I'm making $5 an hour. That is sad. But again, it was a long time ago. And I took the job, and I, climbed the ladder, and eventually I left news, and I went into music radio. And at age 25, I was offered a job. I was doing morning radio. It was a kind of guy-girl morning combo type thing that was big back in the 90s. And took a job at Top 10 Market. I lived in Houston for about 6 months. They flipped that station to Spanish, and so now I was without a job. So at that point, I had to figure out, what do I want to continue doing? Do I want to stay in broadcast? What do I want to do? I did have 3 opportunities on the table, and it took me back to California, which was where I knew I really wanted to be. And so I ended up in Sacramento, California. That was in 1998. And from there, I did a little more time in music radio, but then eventually went back where it all started in news radio. And I had the opportunity to dabble a little bit in sports when I was doing that, because the sports anchor was out. And so I got to do the sports reports on the station. And my love of sports, I've always had it growing up and playing, but I propelled it into broadcast, and I thought, And so when the WNBA team in town had a opening for a PA announcer, this was in 2001, a friend of mine encouraged me to put in for it. And lo and behold, I got the job. I didn't know much about basketball. I'm 5'3". I didn't grow up playing it. And I ended up getting that PA announcer job in the WNBA, my first job as a PA announcer, and spent about 9 years with the team until they disbanded. And, along the way, I met some great people, and some new opportunities presented themselves, and that's kind of how the PA announcing unfolded.
Wow, that's amazing how you went through those changes, and a casualty in the broadcasting industry, specifically in radio, as you alluded to earlier, about when companies, they flip formats. Boy, that's definitely a stressful time for a lot of broadcasters and people that are involved just in the on-air and the production work of things. I'm going to get more into the NBA or WNBA, specifically basketball in the city of Sacramento, in just a moment. But I want to piggyback to what you were saying about, it was just heartbreaking that you're fresh out of college and you're only making $5 an hour for working a job, and you couldn't believe it. Had social media been around at that time when you were fresh out of college, do you think the trajectory would have been that same? Or should I say, had you taken the path to work at that radio station, considering what was going to be on the horizon, or would you have tried your hand at social media and maybe finding ways to monetize your gifts?
I think that I was, even though it was $5, I was still extremely grateful. I mean, at the time, $5 sounds horrible right now. You could not function on $5 an hour, but I finally got a raise to $7 an hour, and I just thought that was great. But at age 25, when I went into Houston, and my offer was it was a contract for $75,000 a year, and I was 25 years old at the time. And for me, when it rolled across, and I say the offer came across a fax machine. I mean, I'm dating myself with all this, but I just looked at my mom, and I couldn't believe my eyes at how much money. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be rich. And now I kind of giggle at that, but I don't know if things had been different, because to be honest, I'm glad things went the way they went, and I'm glad I got a taste of Top 10 Market radio, And I left radio and still continued to do PA announcing, but I left radio in 2005, October of 2005, and took a job working for the state of California and still able to use my degree. I still work in a communications field, but I decided leaving radio for me was difficult because I truly enjoy entertaining the masses and just, being witty, thinking off the top of my head. And I left radio for stability because I wanted to buy a house and I wanted to put down some roots, and I was good with living in Sacramento. I was very proud every time I drove in and saw the Capitol in the city, and I knew this was where I wanted to be at that moment, and I didn't want to risk because I've worked at several radio stations. I've gotten off the air and gone into the director's office, and he decides we're going to go a different direction. And next thing you know, you're packing your boxes and you're leaving the building. I mean, it's just, if the ratings aren't there, they switch gears, and sometimes they don't give it enough time. But I don't know how it is now. I know a lot of the people that I worked with at the time are no longer in radio. Everyone has kind of gone their separate ways. But I wouldn't change anything the way I did it. And obviously now, I've done a podcast before. I've done some narrating of audiobooks. I still found a way to stay behind a microphone no matter what. Fortunately, before I left radio, I got into PA announcing because I don't know if that opportunity would have been there had I left, before getting my first PA announcer spot. But even just doing the PA announcing on the side wasn't enough for me. So that's why I did a podcast for a brief time, started narrating audiobooks. I've done a few of those. Any opportunity to do voiceover, I do. I took one of the rooms in my house and turned it into a studio, just because I wanted to continue working behind a microphone for as long as I possibly can.
Wow, that's awesome. And I think one of the pities for people that want to get into the broadcasting industry, of course, let's give credit to the social media platforms. There's so many ways that people can make money and monetize off of those platforms. But when you've actually been at a physical radio station or even a television station, you get to see how the operation goes. You have such a deep appreciation for not just the talent, but the people that work behind the scenes that really make this thing come to life. And definitely, as you said, it worked out. It all worked out to what you're doing currently, well, what you've done and what you're currently doing as being the address announcer. And I want to talk now just about public address announcing. So you mentioned that at the suggestion of a friend to audition or try out for the Sacramento Monarchs of the WNBA, and you wind up getting the job. The city of Sacramento, as we've known for so long, is a city that loves basketball. We know about how dedicated the fans are to the Sacramento Kings. And I remember watching a lot of Monarchs games on TV and seeing how those fans were amped up. And boy, the WNBA, that presence was phenomenal in Sacramento. What was the WNBA's presence like when the Monarchs were in Sacramento?
It was great because I love the WNBA for this reason. It's very family friendly. So it's one of those things you can take the kids to. They even have like a whole day it's a kids game. It's kids day, and the stands are filled with kids, and it's very different than NBA games. Different crowd, different everything. But for the most part, the Sacramento really loves the Monarchs. I wish it had never gone away. There were times when they teased us with it coming back, and even to this day, if it ever were to come back, I would go after that job. And it's sad because there's even a woman that there's not a WNBA team with a woman behind the mic right now, which is crazy to me. The only professional sports really, when I talk about professional sports, I'm thinking, football, baseball, basketball. There's a few in Major League Baseball, but no other sports have a woman behind the microphone. And it blows my mind. It's 2023, and it still just isn't more common. So I hope that's something we see change. But Sacramento love the WNBA, and they love their Monarchs, and even more so, one of my most memorable moments working for the Monarchs was when we won the championship in 2005. And that was just crazy. And the whole arena was packed, and the electricity, and it was just great. And then the parade that followed the championship, and then the next year they made another run at the championship, and unfortunately that championship didn't end quite the same way. We lost, I believe, to Connecticut that year, and but it was really sad to see it all end.
Yeah, I mean, it was sad. I mean, to see, when I heard that the franchise was leaving the city, if you could answer this question, could you kind of go more into detail on why the Monarchs, or why the WNBA, the franchise, left the city of Sacramento?
The ownership, they sold it. And I don't, I assume a financial decision. And the sad thing is I found out actually that the team was being disbanded, and they kind of dissolved, and they sent the players all to different teams throughout the league. But I found out by reading it on the Associated Press wire. And for anyone listening that doesn't know, that's kind of where it's just kind of like a staple where a lot of people get their news from, news outlets, and it's just a wire service. And that's how I found out. And then eventually I got a call from the team, and it just was very impersonal. It was sad. I still have a great relationship with them because that's kind of how the whole NBA thing came about. The Sacramento Kings announcer got sick. It was in 2014. And having worked with them for so long, they knew me, they knew my work, and they said, "Hey, can you be on standby in case Moke can't go?" And PA announcer for the Sacramento Kings, and he apparently got a touch of the flu that day, and I'm like, "Sure, I can do it. I can get off work a little early because, again, I have a regular job like a regular person." And I said, "Just let me know." And they said, "Hey, can you be here at 1:00?" And because you get there a few hours prior to game time. And I said, "Sure." And when I arrived, they're like, "Hey, by the way, we're going to put out a press release. You're the first woman who's ever served as a PA announcer for the NBA." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so now I start getting nervous. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm usually the person at this point on the other end of pushing the news out, not the one, so it was weird being the subject, the focus of a story rather than controlling the story. And, so that was a unique experience. I will never forget that moment. Again, still to this day, not a woman doing it. I mean, if there was a local opportunity, I would go after it in a heartbeat. But there's not a local opportunity for that because I do love with all my heart, serving as a PA announcer for the sport of basketball. And I've done it at every level. I've done it at high school level. I've done CIF. I've done college. I've done professional. I even had the opportunity to work again for the WNBA in 2020 when they had the Wubble in Bradenton, Florida. That was the WNBA bubble during COVID. And they asked me if I would come out and I worked for a couple of weeks out there to relieve someone who had to go home, one of the PA announcers, because I could not give them 3 months of my life to do that. But I was able to give them a few weeks. And it was one of the most unique experiences I think I've had as a PA announcer.
Congratulations first on that honor of becoming the first woman to serve as a public address announcer in the NBA for the Sacramento Kings from that specific game on that specific day. And I want to touch on the Wubble. We know that 2020 was a year that it will definitely, it'll never be forgotten. And you talked about the Wubble, and you mentioned that you can only give so many weeks to being in Bradenton, Florida for the WNBA when the Wubble was happening. There was so much going on, not just from an athletic standpoint, but things just going on in the world, socially and politically, side of the Wubble. But did you have an opportunity to talk to some of the players, have some type of interaction with them during the Wubble, and just how did you keep yourself mentally in check and mentally focused from what was going on in the world and things that were happening on a constant basis?
Yeah, it was a weird time from the pandemic standpoint, because I was actually, when the whole thing started, I was in, it was March, and I was in Las Vegas working Pac-12 men's basketball tournament, and it was day one, and I remember having to read this statement mid-game, or, like halftime, regarding day two of the tournament, saying that we were going to continue the tournament. However, we weren't going to be able to allow fans in. So it was just going to be play. And they only that, at the end of the day, they basically sent everyone home except me and the DJ. They referred to us as, that was the first time I heard the term essential personnel. And I was like, oh, I'm essential. I don't know what that means. At the time, I was like, I guess I'm in. And then I woke up the next morning and I got a text, and they had decided to cancel the tournament. So basically, I had to rebook my flight home to Sacramento from Vegas. And I just remember standing in the airport thinking, what is happening in the world? What is going on? It was scary. I came back to Sacramento that day, and everything was just kind of unfolding. It was surreal. It was just kind of watching everything shut down, and it was scary, and people were hoarding toilet paper, and it was weird. And then I went back to my regular job, and then that's when teleworking became a thing. And so for about 3 months, I teleworked from my regular job, and the sports world just shut down for a long time until they figured out the whole bubble situation. But I remember getting the call to do the bubble, and there was a lot of, you had to test. They were testing every day, and you had to pass a test and take your temperature, and it was scary because you didn't know. It was this fear of, oh my God, if my temperature is high, or if I test positive, what's going to happen? I'm going to have to stay in a hotel room for 2 weeks, and I'll go stir crazy. And there were just so many unknowns. And the daily testing was, even the following year when they resumed tournament play to some degree, we sat at a table, and our producers were on the complete opposite side from us. And we had double masks, and that wearing a mask and announcing is far from ideal. I recall pulling it down quite a bit. I'm thinking, well, they tested me this morning and I'm negative, so it's not like I'm giving anyone COVID. So I kept pulling it down, and as long as no one, said anything to me, I was going to continue to do that. But for about 2 years, 2020 and 2021 were the weirdest times in sports announcing, just wearing masks. And I remember 2020 was supposed to be my first time doing the NCAA Final Four for the women in Louisiana, and that one got canceled. So that was heartbreaking to me, because that was supposed to be my first time, a dream that I had chased for years, and I finally got the call to do it. And in 2021, they called me back and said, it's on, we're in San Antonio. And so I just had to show proof of my negative test. And we still had to wear masks, though. And I also had to wear a face shield. So I recall I have several pictures of me where I look like a dentist. It's just not how I wanted to be seen on TV, and because I know that's such a high profile, like, people are watching it, and every year the numbers have gotten higher and higher, and I'm thinking this is how the world is seeing me for the first time.
Yeah, and definitely it was a life-changing experience for everybody, whether it be in the sports broadcasting industry or just any industry, any facet of life. Definitely, we will definitely change a lot of people's lives. And I want to stay just with the Wubble for a moment. We've heard about the daily testing procedures that happen with the athletes that were involved in the WNBA. That the same testing procedures apply to you being involved in the media? We didn't have to daily test. I will say that, at least the 2 weeks I was there. I had to take a test prior
And then after so many days, I had to test again. We were sitting behind plexiglass, which was also another weird thing. And we had, lots of space between us and the next person doing the whole social distancing thing. Even when I would go out for a run in Florida, and it is not cool there by any stretch of the imagination. During my off time, if I went out for a run, I would still wear a mask while I was running. And, we'd go to restaurants and we'd still have to mask up. And it was just, even, flying and everything, it was still, but I was not daily tested. I had to do a test and prior to coming home, which I thought was weird, but we weren't allowed to really get near the players, although I did walk past them, but we weren't really allowed to get near them.
Like I said before, that was a life-changing experience for you and for people that were just watching during that pivotal time in our society. And definitely you were a trooper. And again, congratulations to you on not just to you, but to the athletes that went through that trying time in our society. And, being a public address announcer, it's all about preparation. How do you prepare for big events such as what you went through several years ago with the Wubble and also working conference tournaments, working with the Sacramento Monarchs in the WNBA, doing the game for the NBA Sacramento Kings? What's your preparation like for events as you're getting ready to do public address announcing?
A lot of my preparation involves, it's primarily familiarizing myself with the rosters. Pronunciations, I'm very much a stickler on nailing people's names because my thought is if someone's going to hear their name or their family's going to hear their name, because believe me, they will come tell you at varying levels if you mispronounce their child's name. But getting pronunciations right. So I'm big on phonetics. So prior to even going to an event, I'm getting rosters ready because I do keep my own stats. Specifically for basketball, I keep, track of my fouls and, player fouls, team fouls, that kind of thing. So rosters, pronunciations, leading up to like NCAA tournaments, and even I do Pac-12 football championship. Even leading up to that, I view a lot of games. I want to see who the players are. I want to see, because when you're not working with a team regularly, like I did with the Monarchs, like I do with the Republic, you're familiar with the home team. You just have to worry about the visiting roster because you can look at the court or the field or the pitch and see who's out there, and them by sight. But when visiting teams come in, you don't know all the players. You've got 22 people on a field during a soccer match. So, it's good to familiarize yourself with the roster. And if you get a chance to take a look at some of the footage of games leading up to, especially tournaments, because when I do tournaments, which I do a lot of tournament stuff, whether it's Pac-12 or NCAA, it's a different style of announcing. Neutral announcing is very different than announcing for a home team. Neutral announcing, I actually kind of like neutral better, to be honest with you, because I can get hyped for both sides. But I've got to really familiarize myself with both teams because I want to be quick on names. So I'm constantly memorizing players when I'm watching them, and so it's just spending a lot of extra time going through things. And I always make a point prior to a game to check with, especially like college, they have sports information directors, the SID. I get with them and I run through the names and I see if there's any scratches, someone's not playing. I also, I like to, make sure, see if they might know who's going to start, because I like to write it all out. So it's just a lot of, I always make sure I arrive 2 hours before a game or a match, just to get comfortable.
I want to stay just with, you said you are a stickler for pronouncing the players' names and checking in with sports information directors to make sure the names are pronounced correctly. Do you have a background or have a degree maybe in English education to help you with the articulation of how to enunciate a name or names?
I do not. My degree is journalism with an emphasis in radio, television, news, and I've just always. I don't want to say. I hate to say it comes natural, but it's just. And how I announce someone's name in a game, it's just in the moment. I don't know how it's going to come out. I listen to myself, and if it sounds good or if it sounds bad, I won't do it again. But it's kind of just free flow.
Okay, awesome. And thank you so much for answering that question. And you've mentioned we talked about your preparation for big events. Let's talk about some of those events that you've worked on with the likes of, again, with the WNBA, with the Sacramento Monarchs, and then in the NBA working that specific game. Kings, you also mentioned about doing work with regional men's and women's basketball tournaments with the Pac-12, Sacramento Republic Football Club, just a ton of things that you've done. Can you just tell the listeners about some other major events that you've worked on?
Well, I mean, to me, the WNBA championship was a pretty big one. U.S. women's, the time that I got to do the U.S. women's national team game was great. The Final Four, that's hard to top. And of course, my NBA experience. I've emceed some running events, which is a lot of fun. A little easier. I've done NCAA men's regional in 2017. That was a Sweet 16 Elite 8 game. And I think I ended up getting that one through. Pac-12 was the host for it, so they asked me to do it. And it's interesting because a lot of the opportunities I've had, I can trace back to my time with the Sacramento Monarchs. So for me, that was the most, and probably one of my most important jobs that I've ever gotten for PA announcing was when I took that job with the Monarchs, because people that I've worked with in that time have gone on to other places, have gone on to Pac-12, have gone on to the, Sac Republic, and then that's how I got connected through Sac Republic, through that person. She connected me with the U.S. Women's National Team. So it's the opportunities. The College World Series was kind of a one-time thing for me. They needed a host that year, or a PA announcer that year. And again, hadn't done a lot of softball, hadn't really watched a lot of it, but I went to Oklahoma City, and that was a truly unique experience. But I think for me, working these Final Four, especially this last round, was so just, I still get teary-eyed. And when I hear the anthem too, just standing there and seeing all the bodies in the stands, and I just I get emotional. It still has that same thrill for me. It hasn't become just another one. It's still just, each opportunity is still just as thrilling for me. And I hope to do it for a long time. I still have other goals I want to achieve, and I'm going to be persistent until I can meet those goals. Final Four was definitely one of them on my professional bucket list, which I checked off. But now I want to go after the NFL, and I want to get into the Olympics. And somehow, some way, I will find a way to make that happen.
You definitely built up a body of work, and there's no doubt in my mind you're definitely going to achieve those goals sooner or later. And I want to stay just with the women's Final Four. Again, we talked about the ratings were through the roof, and we talked about just this could be a catalyst to take not just women's sports, but women's basketball to the next level. I want to ask you about Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, two phenomenal players in their own special way. With Angel and Caitlin being in the forefront at the women's Final Four and what's recently happened, where, in your opinion, where is this going to take women's college basketball and women's sports to the next level, just in terms of the drama and the excitement and the competitiveness that they've presented?
I think I'm curious to see what the numbers were for the men's tournament. I saw what they were for the women's. I also worked the regional in Seattle, so I got to see, Iowa ahead of going into the Final Four. And my first, time seeing LSU was at the Final Four, and of course the championship, which the drama just continued. And I mean, look, to me, it's entertaining. I saw some of the best basketball I have ever seen, and if you even take it, it's only going to propel the sport. I expect to see the stage get bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, my phone was blowing up. People that were watching the game, not just because they saw me, but they were blown away by Caitlin Clark. Was mind blowing. It was tough to see her foul out. It was sad to see, just because I just enjoyed watching her make history, and I think obviously people tuned in for that, but they also, they also tuned in to see what Coach Mulkey was wearing. I know I was looking forward to seeing what she was wearing. So I think part of that drama helps draw a crowd, and sometimes things like that happen. Now, the antics between the two, I think that, that's what competitive men do it all the time. So I think it's just, it is what it is. But I also saw some pretty darn amazing basketball along with some of those antics.
Yeah, I think what we have to respect, as I stated earlier, is that level of competitiveness. And certainly, Angel doing what she does best, Caitlin doing what she does best. And they do it for the sport, and it's all about the competitiveness of it. And I'm like you, it can only take it to new heights. And, I want to transition now into when we talk about new heights, with the dress announcer. And we know that in most people in broadcasting, as far as being a talent is concerned, they're so fixated on being on air in front of the camera, but also they don't know the voice behind the microphone, the one that's not necessarily seen a lot. When you think of maybe being a ring announcer or what you do as a public address announcer, they normally don't really see that as a viable career. But if somebody that is interested in being a PA announcer, what tips do you give for someone that's interested in becoming a public address announcer?
If you want to become a public address announcer, I think you got to go for it. If you have the opportunity to get in, if you're at college, I say you go for it. You try to start there. I can't say that how I did it would work for everyone. I just, I happened to be in broadcast already, and it just opened the door for me to get my foot in. But I would highly recommend anyone who's I don't know if that opportunity exists at a high school level, if that's something that they would let the kids do. But I think, honestly, in college, doing an internship was the best thing I ever did, because it's truly what got my foot into the door in broadcast. So just like with PA announcing, if you at your high school, at your college, have an opportunity to even shadow, and then maybe you got to be persistent, just spend some time behind the microphone and do it in your house. The equipment, setting up my studio in my house, that wasn't that expensive. Pretty much anyone can put it in. I built the soundproof thing myself, but I did it for under $1,000. I bought a Mac, I bought a mic, I bought all that stuff just to start out, and it just, you can practice and do it in your car, do it in the shower, but you just got to be persistent. And if opportunity presents itself, take it. Don't let fear stand between you and opportunity.
Great words of wisdom right there for anybody that's interested in wanting to pursue a career, getting into public address announcing. And Jaime, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us on the program. Tell everybody where they can find you on any of the social media platforms and any websites. Let the listeners know that as well.
I do have a website. It is JaimeCoffee.com, and that's JAIME, and coffee like the drink. You can find me on Instagram. It's Coffee on the Mic, and Twitter and Facebook. Super simple to find me. It's just JaimeCoffee.
Awesome. Before I let you go, do you have any messages or a message to anyone wanting to pursue or to achieve their dreams, and they may feel that they're kind of up against a roadblock or maybe facing some obstacles right now? Any message that you have for someone that's wanting to achieve their dreams? The floor is yours.
If you can believe it, you can achieve it. So just dream big. Be persistent. Keep your eyes on the prize. Do not let fear get in your way. You just face it head on, show it who's boss, and keep dreaming. It'll happen.
Thank you so much. One more time, Jaime, tell everybody where they can find you on social media and the website.
You can find me on my website, JaimeCoffee.com. It's got links to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
You heard it from her. She's JaimeCoffee, public address announcer for so many big events, including the 2023 NCAA Women's Basketball National Championship, countless Final Fours. Also, she did her thing with the WNBA's Sacramento Monarchs, and she made history on January 29th of 2014, becoming the first woman to serve as a public address announcer in the NBA for a Sacramento Kings game. And she's done so much, continuing to do things in all areas and facets, whether it be public address announcing, projects dealing with commercials, audio books, and she's doing it all. Jaime, thank you so much. And if ever you want to come back on, just feel free to let us know.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll be back with more right after this.
Now time to send things over to JaimeCoffee.
And now, let's meet the LSU Tiger starters. And 4 to 6'3" sophomore from Baltimore, Maryland, number 10, Angel Reese. At guard, a 5'10" freshman from Savannah, Georgia, number 4, Roxanne. And guard, a 5'6" fifth-year senior from Beaumont, Texas, number 45, Alexis Morris. And now let's meet the starters for the Iowa Hawkeyes. At center, a 6'3" grad student from Watertown, Minnesota, number 25, Monica Silano. At guard, a 5'9" senior from Cincinnati, Ohio, number 24, Gabby Marshall. And at guard, a 6' junior from West Des Moines, Iowa, number 22, Caitlin Clark. And introducing the head coaches for the LSU Tigers, Kim Mulkey. And for the Iowa Hawkeyes, Lisa Lunar.
Welcome to Black Belt Beauty Radio, a podcast fueled by a passion to support your journey in developing your most beautiful and optimal performance in life. Each episode is driven with the intention to elevate your mind. When we elevate our mind, we elevate our life. So get ready. It's time to rise. Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Black Belt Beauty Radio. You know, vulnerability is a really, really important emotion that every single one of us is feeling throughout our lives in many different ways. And I often, you know, all of my work is centered in empowerment, right? Self-mastery, right? So lots of self-regulation, you know, the self-talk, all of the content, the writing, everything is always coming with this strength, right? With a lot of courage, confidence, like that energy, right? And a lot of times, you know, it could be interpreted from some individuals as, you know, there's like a lack of vulnerability, right? When you're exuding a lot of strength, you are not necessarily exuding or living from a very vulnerable place.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the program. That audio was courtesy of the Black Belt Radio Weekly podcast, courtesy of the official YouTube channel set up by RoxanneSaffaie, where she's telling you about vulnerability and how it can help you beat your challenges in life. And definitely The Black Belt Radio podcast is dedicated to empowering people to reach their highest potential, and certainly she has lived up to her highest potential thus far and still continuing to do so. And speaking of which, we want to welcome her to the program, where she is the host of the Black Belt Beauty podcast. And we're also going to talk to her about her upbringing, also being involved in mixed martial arts, amongst other things. Let's welcome her to the program. She is the host of the Black Belt Beauty Radio podcast, RoxanneSaffaie. Hey, Roxy, welcome to the program.
Hey, Ed. Thank you for the intro. Happy to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us on the program. So, of course, every story has an upbringing. What was your upbringing like, and where did you grow up?
Yeah, well, primarily California. I am one of 5 siblings, so older sister, 3 brothers, and important to reference them because our family life was, we moved around a bit. We started in Northern California, but at a very young age, moved down to Los Angeles, beach cities, and pretty much parked it there for a while. But I left in my late teens after high school and would adopt several different homes, Hawaii, different islands of Hawaii, and then New York City, moved to Europe, and back to New York, and then Los Angeles. But, yeah, my early childhood years, primarily Northern California and mostly Southern California. And, there's a lot to say. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed, it is a lot to say. And I just kind of want to stay with this nomadic lifestyle that you had going from Northern California to Southern California, and then, as you mentioned, in your late teens, going from Hawaii to New York City and Paris. What were some of the experiences that you took from your upbringing going from Northern California to Southern California, and then by the time you hit your late teens, living in places such as Hawaii, New York City, and Paris?
Yeah, well, the big move when we were younger was, our parents separated, and so we started off, we were with my father in Northern California, but ended up merging down to Southern California, where my mom had moved to live. And so, my childhood there was a lot of hardship, right? So a lot of what I teach about, speak about, write about, coach about, everything from self-mastery, empowerment, is derived from real life hardship, right? And, but we also, me and my siblings, we had a beautiful upbringing as well in so many ways. And one aspect of that has absolutely influenced my entire life still to this day is the athletic part of our journey. So, when I was a very, very young girl, I had the aspirations to become an Olympian. I was a runner. I ran track and cross country, and that would eventually fade when I started surfing in my early teen years. But the fundamentals and the intangibles of sport, and specifically, with the aspiration to be an Olympian, that really stuck. And it still affects my entire lifestyle, how I move, because I'm sure that you know very well, you speak to so many athletes, but the intangibles are everything. They transfer to so many different areas of your life, discipline, focus, your mindset, reaching for that extra 1%, better. So, it's a real high performance life. So, that was really embedded into me and really like reaching for greatness. It was this exposure to greatness that my father did a good job presenting to me and my siblings at a very young age. And not even just athletes, but artists, engineers, authors, poets. He did a really good job at, sharing what greatness looks like through the expression of, individuals, right? And it was just something that I felt within me, that kind of feeling, when you're watching somebody like, man, Rocky's been a life hero, my friend, childhood to this day. And, whoever that is for you, when you're watching some kind of athlete, whether it's cinematic or it's real life, and that feeling you have inside, that was something that I felt at a very young age within me, like, hey, I have this in me, and I want to do something with this, you know. But the other interesting part to my sort of DNA and my spiritual makeup and really like my mindset and everything is that I am an artist. So, you know, while the discipline, the focus, the edge factor was so embedded and so potent and so honored within me, so was the dreamer in me, the visionary, the artist, the lover of poetry and curve and, you know, the abstract, if you will, you know, the irrational, not just the rational. So it's ultimately what has really allowed me to cultivate such a diverse life where I've had so many different experiences, whether, you know, not just my living environments, like, you know, moving from, like I mentioned, you know, Hawaii to New York, which is completely contrasting, but then also, you know, just even in career aspects as well. I've never ever been able to understand how you can put yourself in a box. It just never made sense to me because I've always had so many interests. So while I grew up with my brothers and my sister, but my brothers, you know, we were like hard up on martial arts, blood sport, like, you know, just we were in it, right? At the same time, I deeply loved music, poetry, and I've been writing since I was a very young girl. So that diversity, and it's really, you know, this, for me, it's this beautiful blend of masculine and feminine energies, just very active and very harmonious throughout my life, has really just allowed me to explore the various parts of me and specifically all of the interests that I have, which, you know, it ranges from neuroscience to philosophy, and it's just, yeah, so that's a lot, but I mean, I say all that because it's very real, but also, you know, nothing in my life, and I don't think anybody's life is linear, but certainly in my life, I didn't have this childhood, you go to school, then you go to college, and then you get the job, and then no. I've been a maverick from a very young age. I've, you know, just naturally felt so confident that I was like in my authentic self. And that didn't set up an easy life for me, but it was the only expression of me that I was willing to create my life with. And I can expand on that later if you'd like, but I'll give you a moment to step in because that was a lot.
Oh, no, that was perfect. Thank you for explaining that. And just to what I just wanted to touch bases on, you mentioned about Rocky. Rocky is my favorite movie of all time, and definitely Sylvester Stallone really struck a chord in what he did in terms of just the power of perseverance. I mean, yeah, it's cool to win a title and whatnot, but I think the true meaning of that movie is just about the power of perseverance and never giving up. So definitely everybody has that Rocky story or some type of sentiment related to Rocky. I just want to stay, I mean, we're going to get more into the athletics and, of course, with the neuroscience and the arts in just a little bit, but I want to stay just with this nomadic lifestyle that with going from Northern California to Southern California and then going from Hawaii to New York City and Paris. All of those cities are very unique in their own special way, but the tempos and the pace of living are also different as well. Do you think having that different paces of living, do you think it's prepared you for not just what you do in terms of podcasting, but also talking to different walks of life and with your art career?
Nailed it, 1,000%. People make the world go round. The more that the stronger your social intelligence, I believe, the farther you go. You know, and the diversity, you know, of living in all these different places and how you perfectly put it, you know, the pace being so different. I mean, culture, you know, being different. I lived on the North Shore of Kauai. There was no street lights. So to move, you know, from there and then, you know, to be living and running New York City, like running in it, that right there is so contrasting, and so there was just so much to offer in terms of like me learning human potential behavior, also especially learning about myself, right? Because when you put yourself in a new environment, there's new stimuluses, right? And so how do you respond to that, right? And that sort of became a bit of an addiction, and it really ties back to this, like, the potential piece, right? Because if you stay in one spot, how much change can you really gain from just even an internal perspective? We need different stimuluses so we can respond. We can learn how to respond differently, right? So, yeah, the nomadic life, started obviously from childhood, and that was in our, it was kind of in our control because we made the decision that we were going to move from Northern California, me and my siblings, to go live with my mother. But then from then on, I knew when I was in high school, I knew my sophomore year that I was moving to Kauai when I graduated. So it was very clear to me where I was going. And then, I would live there for several years before I moved to Honolulu, to Oahu, and then I moved from Oahu to New York several years later. But, the big thing for me about all these different moves was that I always just listened, and when I felt like it was time to move, to go somewhere else, and everything just came to me in a way as well. I think it was twofold. It was like me being open and knowing that I was ready to expand, and then the opportunity presented itself to me, and if it felt right, which in these cases it did, it felt like, well, I wouldn't even use the word right because that's a form of judgment. It wasn't even right. It was just more of like a calling, like a knowing, like I got to go. I don't know what this means, but specifically New York City. I had been there. I visited once, and literally the day that I touched down, I knew it inside of myself. It was a visceral feeling. I have it journaled that I had to live in New York, and it would end up being one of the greatest moves of my entire life because of everything that it gave to me. The skill transfer alone, character building, talk about like perseverance. New York will test you like I don't believe any other city in the world. And I got tested, because I didn't move there with a plan. I didn't move there with everything being so set up for me. No, I fully just went, you know what? This is what I feel is my next move, and I'm just going to go and see what happens. And it ended up being home for over 5 years, and very big years of my life, my 20s, where you're really shifting and trying to, you're learning so much, again, about the world, right? So I went to the School of Life, right? This is a university right there, New York City, the streets of New York. But, also, and this is maybe an advantage for me, but because I've been writing my whole life, I've just always been a very introspective individual. And writing, journaling specifically, has always allowed me to see, hear, and feel myself. So I've been able to be in an honest conversation with myself. And all of these changes and all of these experiences from living in all of these, destination cities that were so contrasting and offered so much, I was able to really metabolize what was going on with me in each of these cities, specifically because I took to my pages every day, right? So, the moving, and thank you. I love the highlight of, the nomadic factor, because it really actually, to me, is one of the greatest aspects of my life and really what has helped me to become the woman that I am today and to build, the business that I have today and be pursuing what I'm pursuing today. Because again, it all comes down to your social intelligence, how you interact with people, and even just observation of humans, like human behavior.
Absolutely. And it sounds like that you gained a lot of experiences during your travels and even what you're currently doing right now in your business endeavors. And I wanted to stay with your upbringing for a moment. You mentioned that you didn't have a linear upbringing, you and your siblings, and you didn't have the traditional model of you go to college, you get a good job, things of that nature. But if I'm looking at your upbringing right here, you come from a Middle Eastern upbringing. So this is a two-part question. Where are your parents from specifically in the Middle East? And number two, I know sometimes when a lot of the children of immigrants that come from Middle Eastern countries or African countries or any countries for that matter, it's always about the American dream. Do this, do this, do this, and do that. It's a checklist, and then you're out in the world. So two-part question. What is your parents' upbringing in the Middle East? Where are they from? And then was it the pressure intense to go to college and chase the quote-unquote American dream?
Great question. So my parents are both from Iran, so Iran, but pronounced Iran correctly. And so we are first generation. And, you know, my parents came to the country and really just had a deep love and reverence for America and what America is really built off of, what, you know, the American dream stands for, and not from this place. So we did not necessarily have that, you know, this is your life plan, you know, built out, and you need to do this, you know, go to college, go to this. It wasn't like that with our with my parents, but what they did do a really good job of is really explaining and demonstrating, hey, the country that you're in, that you're from, that you're, you know, this is the country that says you got a dream, you're willing to put in the work, you can make it happen here. And that was, we grew up very much, you know, with a lot of love and reverence for our country, and I love my parents for that, especially being that they don't even come from America originally. My father is absolutely, you know, he's really a genius in his own right. Academia, just like incredible human, like PhD, USC engineer, philosopher, poet. Unfortunately, on the, you know, parenting side of things and on the marital side of things, didn't excel in those, you know, those aspects. So, you know, there was, again, that was where a lot of the hardship was presented in the family. And so, you know, my parents divorced. My mother is a fighter, not, you know, not in MMA, but a fighter in life. You know, she's an artist. She's a fantastic hairstylist. But, you know, what happened between my parents, you know, it got pretty critical because my father was physically abusive. And so my mom had to leave. And, you know, so we really did have the sort of underdog, which I love the story of the underdog, and probably for this reason, but we grew up with that underdog, you know, energy. It's like we didn't have it easy. And in so many ways, there's so much beauty built into our upbringing, and some of which I've already mentioned, but the hardship was real. It was gnarly, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But, you know, there is something in psychology called post-traumatic growth. And we naturally, me and my siblings, including my mother actually, we just happened to go that route. No one turned into a victim. Now ask me why, I don't know. Maybe it's because we're designed to, you know, be in the positions we are. I'm designed to be in the role that I am and support the women that I support, and, you know, because that was my natural MO from the hardship, right? So, and the hardship was gnarly. It was real. But, yeah, so we grew up with that underdog having to deal with, you know, all of that. But, I mean, I know I just took us a bit further than your questions, but I feel like it's relevant to the story. But, yeah, I mean, I appreciate so much being first generation. And I can appreciate it specifically because my parents did an excellent job at making, you know, at really highlighting what America is, you know, founded off of, and, you know, how if we do our part, that we are in the place in the world that will support you to, you know, create your big moonshot dream.
No, you weren't long-winded at all. Thank you so much for going into explanation about that. That was really beautiful. And again, thank you for that. And while we're talking about your parents' upbringing and where they came from in Iran, when was the last time that you and your siblings went back to Iran?
Oh, we've never been. No, that's the thing. It's interesting because while there was a lot of the culture, my parents were very, almost I would say, protective to make sure that we were very American. And I say that just because, it's not like there was a dismissal of the Persian culture. No, we have the food, there was a lot of that as well. But in comparison to the norm of first-generation families from Iran, oh, no, you would never even know that our parents come from, that we came from, because our whole lifestyle and the way everything was cultivated for our, for us, me and my siblings, it was never, again, it wasn't a dismissal or like avoiding the aspects of the Persian culture by any means. It's just that they didn't force feed, push, or they didn't make it all, they really presented the American culture to us. And that's the culture that we grew up with. But of course, there's Persian New Year, first day of spring. Like there were other, there were certainly, factors of, the Persian culture that was integrated into our life. Because of course, my parents, they were not, denying their own culture, and they're our parents, so they naturally are going to, just be expressing parts of their what comes natural to them, as being from Iran. So it was absolutely, I mean, my grandmother as well, it was naturally integrated, but it just, sometimes I think when you are first generation, the parents really move their country to this country, and then the upbringing in the home is that country in your, does that make sense? Whereas like my parents didn't do that. It was Americans in our home with, some aspects of their culture, just because, again, that's where they come from.
It makes a whole lot of sense. So in other words, you and your siblings your parents made sure that you and your siblings were Americanized and make sure that you and your siblings were a part of the American dream. It makes a whole lot of sense. And again, thank you for explaining that. And let's talk now about your introduction to sports. So while we were talking about your upbringing and your interesting lifestyle, you mentioned that throughout school, you excelled in track and field and cross country, and you had dreams of wanting to be in the Olympics. What specific events did you run in track and field?
I ran the 800 and the 1500. Flojo was my idol. I'm 44. He'll be 45 this year. She was everything to me. And I started racing when I was 7 years old. It was a 10K actually. So we ran longer distances at first when my father first introduced us to running, and it was a really fun, interesting journey. Like in the beginning, it was definitely something where everything's brand new and you're learning and then you're discovering. I actually just was naturally fast. I was naturally good at it, and really the majority of my siblings. I mean, we're all our body, types are mesomorphs. We're built for sport. We're built for battle, really. And so learning how to run and learning that we were good was a really fun experience. And then again, sharing with you earlier how my father did a good job of really exposing greatness and highlighting it. And of course, you respect your father too, so you see like what lights him up, and it, there's a side effect there to us as well, because we want Dad to be proud of us too. So, but the whole thing just made such an experience for me where, I really did have a vision of, I want to go to the Olympics, and I want to race, I want to compete. But yeah, it was short-lived, but it was still a very prominent part of my upbringing for reasons that I even mentioned earlier. But I mean, just even now, just in the physical sense of what I do, how I train, like life is my sport. I'm an athlete. I'm not competing, although I do plan to enter some masters track events just for fun, because why not, because sprinting is a big part of how I train. But that portion of my athletic sort of journey in the beginning was really potent and really did, it affected the whole trajectory of my life, as well as my siblings.
What was the most challenging for you, middle distance or country?
Man, it's hard to say because I kicked butt at cross country. Like, I was winning. I was first. I was, and it was the same on those, in those races for track. I definitely discovered I wasn't really fast twitch. Like, I'm not a 100-meter girl, because I need to open up. I need a little bit more distance to really get into my legs and open up. But to be honest, I just remember being really great at all of that. You know what? It's interesting because while there's the physicality part of, and just like actually having technique and all that, I will tell you that what always pushed me at the end was my heart. And that's not me just being a poet. So I did a really good job of just staying at the very top, like pushing. So maybe it's me and, whoever's going to be second. But at the very end, I just had this extra fuel, this extra switch that would take me to the finish. And that was both. That was cross country and on those track races. So, what did I like running more? That's the question. I think I would say that I like the track just because, man, 10Ks are gruesome. I love that I was so good at it, but the training sucked. And it got to be a problem for me at some point where I was really trying to avoid it.
Mm-hmm. Well, as they say, it's not about the size of the dog in the fight, but it's the size of the fight in the dog, and definitely, as you brought up, the heart. And that's definitely important, and you have that tenacity and that will to win. And I just kind of want to continue about your journey in running. You mentioned that your father introduced you to the sport of running. Was this something that he did for fun back in Iran, or was this an activity to America, or was it just something that he watched and he thought it was, he became an enthusiast?
No, it wasn't something that he did back in Iran. Not that I'm aware of. I don't remember him ever mentioning that. I think it was just something that he became, he was athletic, or started to really be in the earlier years of my life, did some competition like Ironman and whatnot, loved to ride his bike as well, 10-speed. So, I think for my father, it was a combination of wanting to make sure that he was bringing us into sport for discipline, for, obviously the health factor, but then I think it was also this family activity piece, right? Because it was something that we would all do together. So I think for him, it was more of the enthusiasm, he was an enthusiast of it, but it was also, I think, designed to really direct us from that discipline, get into sports, and also the camaraderie factor of just, doing healthy things with your family, right? Not just sitting and watching TV. It's like, no, we're going to the track and we're running, like it or not, And in the beginning, we were all like, yeah, let's go to the track. But there were definitely times later that would come in and like, no.
Well, definitely. I know one thing's for sure. You mentioned that the health benefits that your father brought to you and your siblings in terms of running and getting involved in activities that definitely paid off big dividends for you and your siblings. And another activity that you've been involved in for a while is mixed martial arts, or MMA. How did you get involved in mixed martial arts, and who introduced it to you?
Yeah, so as a kid, we loved we loved martial arts, like I mentioned. Bloodsport, still one of my favorite movies to this day. Fighting in general, like Rocky, right? So we loved martial arts growing up. And then what would happen is the Gracie family, so Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, specifically Horion, pronounced in America, people say Horion Gracie, who was one of the original founders of the UFC. His kids and my siblings in different ways. So my sister with one of his daughters and became best friends, and then my brothers became, super close to some of his sons, now like brothers and best friends. So we naturally, it's almost like our families were really destined to commingle. And my brothers, actually my sister was the first one on the mat, but the first real, pursuer of jiu-jitsu, my brother Mike Saffaie, who's been a black belt now under Horion Hidon and Henner Gracie for, I think it's been 40 years now. He was the first one. And then my other two brothers, too, Darius and even Aria went in for a little while but had to stop because of he had an injury. They started. And then it was something that I always, again, because I always loved martial arts and I loved fighting, but specifically martial arts. We did Taekwondo when I was in high school. I ended up blowing out my knee, had 3 knee surgeries. That's a whole story in of itself from a really excellent kick that I did in the air. I just landed not great. But jiu-jitsu for me was so unique because it's the discipline that teaches you how to fight on your back. And if you can't fight on your back, you're vulnerable. I don't care how Krav Maga or whatever, with all due respect to every discipline, because I think they all have, great, important aspects to them. But even specifically as a woman, can't fight on your back, you're in trouble. And so the physicality, aspect of it, and as well as the self-defense, and then there's this whole philosophy and art that comes with really all martial arts, but jiu-jitsu has its own, culture as well. It was just really interesting to me, and I was very fortunate that, the doors were wide open to the greatest academy literally in the world, from my opinion, from the greatest of the greats who brought jiu-jitsu as we know it from Brazil to, Los Angeles. And so it was one of those situations where it was just the right time, and it was almost like I was just meant to go that route. I'm not a black belt. People think that because Black Belt Beauty, my brand, Black Belt Beauty Radio, they always think that. I'm like, no, I am not a black belt in jiu-jitsu. That would be incredible. But it's just to get your black belt in jiu-jitsu is a whole nother, you have to be so dedicated on a whole nother level. So I love it. I mean, it's definitely something that I intend to do for as long as my body will allow me to do, and I really cannot say enough wonderful things about jiu-jitsu, specifically the martial art.
Well, you and your siblings, you definitely have the right training under the Gracies. I mean, that's a name synonymous with not just Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but just martial arts as a whole. I mean, man, they're no nonsense, and they're still definitely going strong. And I want to stay just with the martial arts that you study, and that's specifically Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You mentioned about there's so many disciplines and so many ways to learn martial arts. Can you explain to the listeners what is Brazilian jiu-jitsu and what are the attack methods or strategies in Brazilian jiu-jitsu? Is it where you use submission holds, or do you use kicks? Explain that to the listeners.
Yeah, it's essentially grappling. So submission holds are part of it, but it's grappling, and you're wearing a gi or no gi. I actually really love no gi, but with gi, it's like now you're in jiu-jitsu and not just grappling. And really, I would say the primary principle behind jiu-jitsu, if you kind of had to pin it to one thing, is leverage. And that was the most beautiful part about it. You can look to Royce Gracie in the beginning days of the UFC. Why was it so incredible to watch Royce? because he's going into the octagon against guys that were 3 times his size, 3 times more powerful, et cetera, and he was just like flipping them over, grabbing their arm, choking them out, and it was done before it even started. That's leverage. And that is, I mean, it gives me chills because it's saying, hey, it's not the strongest, it's not, it's not the biggest, it's the one who understands leverage. I think, I'm saying this at the most, and knows how to implement it, at the highest level, right? And also knows how to stay very composed in the heat of the battle. That's important too, So, I mean, that's to really just keep it simple and sum it up. It's leverage, it's grappling, and if you're focused on jiu-jitsu, then yeah, you're wearing a gi, and there's chokes that you can do with your the gi itself, submissions. I mean, the arm locks, the triangles. These are some of those classic submissions in jiu-jitsu, and man, the effectiveness it's incredible. It's really powerful. Guillotines, incredible.
Yeah, I mean, seeing some of that, it is incredible just the way they bend to get them in an arm bar and then the ankle locks and things of that nature, man. It's something else. It's a sight to see, I tell you that. And I want to just stay again with the different disciplines of martial arts. What's the hardest, in your opinion, that you've learned, Taekwondo or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Definitely jiu-jitsu. I mean, Taekwondo was a small piece for, when I was 16. And again, I ended up, I don't even remember how long I was doing it for before I blew out my knee. But the jiu-jitsu is it's a puzzle. And right when you think you figured something out, there's an answer for it. And now you're back at the drawing board, which is actually the addiction. That's the addiction. It's like you can't get to the center of a Tootsie Bop. For anybody who remembers that commercial. It's like you don't, but that's the addiction, because you're continuously learning. You're continuously having to use your mind and as well as your body, obviously, And so I think that the learning factor, and then obviously the more that you progress, it's the best feeling ever, because it's so not easy. Look, I mean, some of the principles are, I don't want to say not easy, that they're easy to comprehend, depending on who's your teacher. I think that's always a factor. My teachers are the best in the world. Maybe I'm biased, but I'm sure a lot of people agree. Because I know how to break down the principles. And I think if you understand the principles, then it really sets you up powerfully. But I still think that jiu-jitsu is way more mentally and physically demanding to Taekwondo in comparison. And I don't want to, and I'm not just trying to be nice, I say this truly from my heart, with all due respect to anybody who is, an avid Taekwondo practitioner. Like, I have respect for every discipline, because at the end of the day, it's what you feel real resonance and connection with, and all of them have tremendous importance to their specific discipline and the techniques, and I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if you could just know it all?
The more you know, the more effective you'll be, and definitely in martial arts is no exception to the rule. And while we're talking about the Gracies for a moment, I've got to ask you a lighthearted question. What's your Portuguese like?
Non-existent. Yeah, I can speak a little French. I can understand more French than I can speak, but yeah. And so, sometimes there could be a subtle crossover because it's a Latin derivative, but no, I didn't pick it up at all.
Let's stay just with the martial arts theme for a moment. And you mentioned it earlier, the Black Belt Beauty podcast. It's growing. It's on YouTube. It's on different digital streaming platforms. And it's a podcast where it's all about helping people to become the best that they can be, no matter what field or fields that they're in. Just tell everybody what the concept of the Black Belt Beauty podcast is all about, and how did the idea come about?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Black Belt Beauty Radio. You nailed it. Really, to make it simple, it's all the content there is designed to help you live from your greatest expression, the greatest expression of you. I mean, that's where Black Belt Beauty, by the way, the name. So this is just again, I'm a writer, so I get very poetic at times, but we all know that to be a black belt is the highest expression. It's the highest standard. So the play on the words for me is to live from the highest expression of you is to live a beautiful life. And that's Black Belt Beauty. And so, the content, the guests, I speak with a variety of guests from all walks of life, authors, neuroscientists, Olympians, you name it, we just need to, incredible, some of the best doctors in the world, poets, artists, and, all of them they're all thought leaders, they're all, elite, world-class experts, and they all have so much to bring to the conversation, whatever their genius and their focus is. All of, I believe in my self-development is holistic for me. So the podcast is really a holistic self-development, self-mastery focused podcast, right? Holistic meaning it's never been interesting for me to accelerate in one area of life. Like, let's just say you do excellent in your career, but the rest of your life is falling apart. Not interesting to me, right? For me, what's interesting is vitality, right? So your health, is from an internal, not just like your blood work, but like your creativity, you're potent, you're inspired. This is why I focus on vitality. So this is a big piece that's going to affect how you show up in your work. Right, yeah, kick ass in work, accelerate in work, be the best you can be in work or school or, but it's that whole picture that's really interesting to me. And I don't see, for me, when everything is supporting each other, you're going to get the best result. And so that's why it's so important, outside of it just being my own interest and my own lifestyle, it's really important for me to bring the variety of topics to the podcast. And so it's not a niche focused, it's just sport or it's, no, because to really live from your greatest expression, you're not doing just one thing. You're not accelerating in just one area. Or if you are, it'll bite you in the ass later. There will be some area of your life that if you've been neglecting that will show up later and, be demanding your attention. A lot of times we see that in health, like burnout, right? So long-winded answer, but where it came from for me, number one, I'm just a very curious woman. I've always been curious, like I said, physiology, biology, neuroscience, poetry, philosophy, astronomy. I'm interested. I'm curious. And so when podcasts started to come into my life, I started listening to podcasts. I think it was like 2014 is when it started to trickle into my life. And I don't watch TV with the exception of UFC fights. I just found myself just so drawn, always listening, because you just learn. You can learn so much from podcasts. And you learn also in such a unique format. It's like you're listening in on cool discussions or somebody speaking that, has something great to say or has an energy that you like. And so it's a different way to be learning. And so for me, I love the platform and I love the medium. I've always been a communicator. Such that, I would get in trouble in school for talking too much, and my mom even had to come sit in class with me once. We took a test. Yeah, and it was just so funny to this day, and I hope my teacher remember, here I am now. Communication is literally my career, and it's literally shifting lives. But yeah, I got in trouble for it when I was in school when I was a kid. But communication, both verbal and written, has just always been a natural gift, I guess, talent, but I've nurtured it. I've fostered it to, even when I started the podcast, it's a form of public speaking, and that was not a comfort zone for me by any means. I was so nervous, but I knew I sat on the idea for almost a year before I officially launched. And then when I launched, I mean, it was just, that was it. There's no turning back. I love it. It's a full production. We've come a long way. It takes a lot to have a real substantial show, especially, you know, you have weekly episodes that drop at the same time. I mean, and it doesn't stop. So you know this life, you know. But it's a labor of love that I can literally see myself doing for the rest of my life.
I absolutely agree with you. I think podcasting is, well, if it hasn't, it's definitely going to replace music, because one of the beauties of podcasting is that it's long form and you can listen anytime you want to, and there's different niches and different topics and subtopics. So it's just a beautiful thing in podcasting. It just doesn't feel rushed like mainstream media. People can take their time and get their thoughts together. Yeah. So podcasting, I think, is such a beautiful medium when it's done the right way, when it's produced right. It's definitely one of a kind. And I want to stay just with your podcast, with the Black Belt Beauty Radio. We live in a society where there's so much ageism that's being practiced, and people are saying, well, you've had your day, it's time to move on, and things of that nature. So was this a personal experience that you went through in terms of just dealing with the whole ageism situation, or was this something that somebody else that you knew went through this?
No. So I've never taken a hit. To be honest, my physical appearance tends to always blow everybody away. Like, nobody guesses, you know, oh, you're 44, because, you know, lifestyle, when you're doing things like, I mean, listen, I'm young. 40's young. Not supposed to look old and tired at 40. I get why people, you know, the tired thing happens, but I'm just saying, when you're really managing your health and well-being with reverence, consistency, you know, it'll show up a little different on the physical side of things. For me, what I have paid attention to growing up, specifically as a woman, I just, you know, the hiding of the age always annoyed me. I understand why, because I can see how, you know, the rejection that would come, you know, for women specifically. Men have it different, you know. It's like it doesn't seem to matter as much. But women, you get to a certain age, and it's like, oh, you're irrelevant. You're downhill from here, you know. So I really love being a voice to say, and it's not like this super, like I have a, you know, I'm walking around with my age on my chest, like, hey, like I don't need to flash it, but I certainly will never hide it. And if anything, I am proud to share my age, because the word old after the number doesn't even apply to me. I don't even know what that means. I don't feel old. I don't look old. I don't live old. Strong is the word that comes after my years. So I'm 44 years strong now. I'll be 45 years strong this year. And how does that feel when you actually when you replace old for strong? I mean, first of all, your whole mentality of how you're approaching your life is different. You're just getting stronger as you carry on in your life. That's awesome. But aside from that, I mean, that's a big piece. I think it's important, and I really want to be, again, I'm not starting an organization around this. I'm just being honest and transparent. But I do love being a representative for women, for the young girls, to say, like, look, because here's the thing. It's not just age. If you're hiding behind, if that is something that you're, you know, not being honest about, then what else are you not being honest about in relation to your authentic self, which is one of the core subjects that I speak about, write about, because it's very, very insidious when you start to, or at any moment of your life, choose to not be operating from your authentic self. And, you know, that would lead us into a whole nother conversation, but the age is one component of it. So to me, you know, I want young growing girls into becoming a woman, and even women to this date, like, hey, own it, you know, because here's the deal. This is not a dress rehearsal. This is one life. And I'm living every day with everything I got. I'm proud that I'm still here. I'm grateful that I'm still here. And I'll tell you what, I'm not trying to be 22 anymore. Did that with all my heart. We're good. We're good. And I know the wrinkles will come, things will slow down. Hormones are already real, like having to learn how to manage the shifts. It's real. But that's life, and I think when you can really appreciate the authenticity in this factor of life and just really stand in ownership of, who you are and where you are and in every aspect, I mean, this is true empowerment,
Indeed, it is true empowerment. And I think you are just one of the testaments of just how age is truly nothing but a number. And it's not about the number, but it's definitely how you feel. And it's all in the mindset. If you're just moving, and you definitely can shatter the glass, so to speak, and just continue to just live a life. And as you put it best, this is not a dress rehearsal. You get one, so you better make the most out of it, and definitely just continue to grow and be sharp and continue to be sharper and just take on new challenges in life. And thank you for your answer on that. And speaking of continue to be sharp and continue to just grow, you mentioned about neuroscience, and we know that the brain is such a unique and it's a very complex organ in the body. We know that the heart is important, the liver, the lungs, and the kidneys are all important, but the brain is so interesting and it's so unique. What sparked your interest in studying about neuroscience?
Yeah. Well, listen, when you are someone who's always looking for this way to become better, and when I say better, there's a lot that goes into that, at least for me. So this means, how do I keep my health functioning at the highest levels? How do I keep my athleticism functioning at the highest levels? How do I keep my cognition operating at the highest levels? How do I manage my stress at the highest levels? All of that comes down to your brain, your nervous system, like understanding how much your brain, your mind, your thoughts, your nervous system, your recovery, like all of that plays into the picture, right? So for me, because I love psychology, naturally just love it, that I always have, when I would say managing stress, knowing how to manage, like self-mastery, right? How to manage your emotions, for example. While there's such a big piece of this conversation that lives in psychology, we cannot ignore neurobiology, mechanism of like what's actually happening in your brain, dopamine, the fear response, your nervous system. When you start to understand, oh, wait, for example, my brain, my nervous system is designed, like I'm afraid of something. We're making up a story here. So, you get all the feelings of like the heart, anxiety and this, because we're hardwired to survive, right? So we can even be in a non-life-threatening situation like speaking on stage, but yet our body's responding like the lion's chasing us. Understanding that is empowering, because then you have the tools, you at least have the pathway to start developing the tools to manage that. If you can't manage your emotional states and your stress, then it's going to be very hard to accelerate in these avenues that I just shared, or really any area of your life, someone who's just always being broken down by their emotions and stress isn't going to do great in life, period. So, I always say, like, I'm so grateful for my interests, because I don't think you get to pick your interest necessarily. It's just like one thing kind of leads to another. But for me, the thread is that piece of how do I keep living from my fullest potential, or to my fullest potential, from and to, really. And neuroscience plays a massive role. Besides, it's just so interesting because there's so many factors that, when you learn, and you don't have to be a neuroscientist. We have Andrew Huberman. He's one of the greatest neuroscientists out there who has done an excellent job of bringing, like the PR of neuroscience has gone through the roof just because of this particular neuroscientist, and his ability to explain the complexities of neuroscience in a very distilled format for everyday individuals to understand and then apply. Like, oh, in the morning, get up, and in the earliest parts of the day, get like 10 minutes of sunlight, the sky. You don't have to stare in the sun. You don't do that. But look towards the sky and get that light. Why? For many reasons. What it does to your dopamine levels, serotonin, your melatonin. It actually affects how you sleep that night, the quality of your sleep, your mood, throughout the day. So just learning something as simple as that is empowering. It's going to help you. Anytime that you feel better, you can perform better. So that's a big factor. How do I learn how to feel better and feel in a multitude of ways? Because if performing matters to you, then you have to care about that piece. And neuroscience is a pathway to understand how to do that.
Absolutely. And what you do in terms of making sure your brain health is intact and you're still going strong, whether it be practicing mixed martial arts or doing the podcast or also just as you said, writing poetry and studying different things, you're definitely keeping your brain health intact as well.
Yeah.
And while we're still talking about brain health for a moment, supplements and vitamins, you mentioned about getting the proper sunlight. Do you, and aside from the activities that you're a part of, do you take any vitamins or supplements, or what does your diet consist of in order to keep your brain health intact?
Yes. It plays a big role. I mean, food is more important than the supplementation, but supplementation does have a place for sure. My diet is protein-centric. I have literally, and I know that I'm biased, but she is one of the most phenomenal doctors, physicians in the world, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She's pretty well known, just out there in the media, social media, big social media, but, her whole approach is muscle-centric medicine. And, the primary focus is managing muscle health, because your muscle is the currency for your life, longevity, not just longevity, but like how to live long and strong. So I'm very protein heavy. Everything is very clean. I mean, everything in my life, from my cleaning products to what I eat. So I don't do antibiotics. I don't do artificial. I don't do anything processed or anything like that, whole foods. And again, protein centric. So I make sure to at least get, the amount of protein that I need for my body composition, and also hormone health throughout the day. And it varies even through the week because of hormones. And outside of that, it's just, clean, healthy fats and some good carbs like sweet potatoes. I love sweet potatoes. Getting ready to eat them soon. And fruit, berries, cacao, like flavonoids and, just different antioxidants, just really nutrient-dense foods. You are what you eat. And I always say, my food is good mood food. People think it's just, yes, I came out and I definitely was a happy baby, naturally my disposition for, towards life has been optimistic and joyful, but I know the difference. I ate Taco Bell. I wasn't always, dialed in like this. I know the difference. I know the difference of my emotional resilience, specifically because of my diet and lifestyle shifts. Emotional resilience. How you manage stress. Excuse me. 100% your diet is affecting that. And that's just one factor. There's sleep and movement as well, but focusing on diet here. So supplements, absolutely. ATP Labs, that's my go-to. They are my number one. They are clean. If you're a competing athlete, you don't have to worry about any of their products. Highly effective. So all my protein powders come from them. But yeah, and then some of the most important supplements that I never cheat on, vitamin D, omega, fatty acids, so fish oils, creatine, and then there's some other, for me specifically, I love B vitamins, and then I also love adaptogens like ashwagandha and rhodiola, vitamin C. So yeah, there's different, there's different reasons for different supplements. Detoxification is very important, especially as a menstruating woman. You need to manage your estrogen and your progesterone levels, and that comes as a result of how you're detoxing. So I can get super sciencey. I have to manage that. But yeah, so to answer your question, I mean, do I value supplementation? Absolutely. But I would say that the majority of the nutrients that I'm getting is absolutely coming from my food, and my food is protein dominant, and, very, low glycemic, I mean, I'm not anti-carbs. Again, my sweet potatoes are smiling at me right now. I've got strawberries looking at me. I love it, but I'm not a heavy all-day carb girl. I'm also very strategic about when I eat my carbohydrates, because, food is information. So it's telling your body to do different things for different reasons. So I leverage my nutrition for whatever it is that I need. Sweet potatoes at night help you sleep better, right? Carbohydrates after lifting weights repairs muscle, helps muscle. So, again, I get super sciencey. I don't want to bore anybody here, but for me, it's fun. I love being the alchemist of myself and of my life. And, there's certainly a big alchemical component in the kitchen, because it's fueling you. If you're eating foods that are depleting your energy, well, what's that going to do? I mean, it's in the statement. You're going to be depleted. You're not going to have energy. And here's the thing, Ed. This is maybe one of the kind of closing, I can say this, like, listen, I'm here to live long and strong because I want to live as long and strong as I can. I want to have the most time on earth with my loved ones. However, in addition to that, it's so important for me to manage my cellular health, which is essentially health, right? Your cells, you need them to be healthy, because I have a lot to create, and none of it's small. I'm writing my first book of many to come. I have my podcast that has a lot more coming for it. I want to make it three-dimensional and do live podcast events, and there's other big things and more speaking on stage, and there's so many other factors. But I mean, even writing a book alone is such an arduous task for me, as a writer my whole life. You need energy. Creativity is a full body experience, and creativity is just one aspect of it. Then you have a business to run, and for me, I'm not trying to go down with these ideas, these creative seeds that are so robust within me. They're not getting buried with me. I'm leaving them here when I go. That's the plan, right? Well, so your energy, I need energy for that. So it's deep. It's not just, I eat this to be healthy or to be slim, or no, that too. That's a side effect. Deeper. And I think that's actually an important piece to pull on, just because if you can tap into the deeper parts, the whys, that's actually what helps you sustain and be consistent, especially when it gets hard. And even for me, I mean, it doesn't get hard to eat the way I eat. I don't want anything else. But just managing everything can get, it's a challenge at times. Lots of moving parts. But the why factor is so strong for me that I'll work it out. I'll figure it out. I'm going to do my best. And I think, in observing so many, humans, not judging, just observing, and what, specifically women have come to me for, like, it's so hard to be consistent. Well, my question is, why does it matter to you? Ask yourself that question. Because here's the deal. If it doesn't really matter to you, then let yourself off the hook. It doesn't have to. But if it does, well, then dig deeper. And then when you get to, like, the core of why, then it's going to hit you in a different way, and you're going to show up every day for that thing. Rain or shine, taking punches from life, whatever. Like, your inner Rocky will show up. Straight up.
Absolutely. And as they say, health is wealth. And also you mentioned about all the stuff that you would like to do with, as they say, you want to live full and die empty. And that's truly what makes life worth living. Remember, health is wealth, and live full and die empty. And you mentioned about clean and being organic, as well as we talked about the vitamins and the supplements that you take. I got to ask you, you grew up in a Middle Eastern family, being of Iranian ancestry. What are some of your favorite Iranian foods that you enjoy eating from time to time?
Well, Okay, well, so the only thing that I really eat now, because, it's actually funny. It's called cuckoo, but it's a bunch of these herbs that, it's almost like a quiche. It's a bunch of these herbs that, the way that they put the herbs together with eggs. So my mother makes it with avocado oil. She gets this. It's a very it's a put together variety of herbs, and then as my mom's cuckoo is literally it makes my mouth water right now. I'm ready for dinner, but it's so good. I mean, the other dish that I don't eat so much because it spikes insulin. There's nothing wrong. I'm not weaponizing food. It's just I know that it wouldn't hit me in the best way. I don't have that much sugar necessarily in my diet. So, but man, Saffaie in June, that's the name of it. And it's the stew over rice. A lot of the food is actually stew over rice. And the rice in of itself is like cake. It's just so good. But it's a sweet stew. It's got pomegranate, and brown sugar. So it's brown. It's so good. I haven't had it for years and years. But on all the holiday dinners and whatnot, my mom always makes me cuckoo. That's for Roxy.
I learned something new today about Iranian cuisine. I never heard of cuckoo, but thank you for telling me and the listeners about that as well. And while we're still talking about cuisine for a moment, we mentioned about your parents' roots being in Iran. Everybody has their vices at some time to time. So what are your cheat meals? What are some of the things that you like to indulge in every now and then?
So I don't even like that term. There's nothing for me to cheat on. I'm not. I mean, I get it, and it's a common term, but here's the deal. I just don't want what most people would see as interesting or taste. I don't want a big. I don't know. I don't even know what it is. Again, I grew up eating it, but I'm interested in. I love wild salmon. I love dark chocolate. Oh, let me tell. And I have that every night. So you know what I mean. So I'm fully fed and nourished. If I had to I don't know what So there's nothing to cheat on. I love and eat every day big grass-fed steak. What am I cheating on here? Dark chocolate, steak, wild salmon, macadamia nuts. This really is delicious food to me. So I don't know where to go from there. A Big Mac or nothing's pasta. No, doesn't do it for me. Doesn't. When I see food, I think it's how immediately I have a feeling response to food now. So when I look at a steak, it's I feel energized. I feel strong. It sits really well in my body. A big bowl of pasta, albeit amazing. I've had it. I know it's delicious, but I just feel slow when I look at it. It's my body just feels tired. And again, I've experienced so much, but this is my journey, and it's also so important to say that because, this is just what I know. And when I say I know it from a feeling level, but I also know from comprehensive blood labs that I do every 6 months. And when I say comprehensive, we check everything, and my labs kick ass. So my food is literally doing what it's supposed to do, and then I just feel it, So probably a boring answer. You weren't looking for it, but dessert. My girl, one of my dear friends, who's an incredible chef, and she makes all the best foods with the ingredients that I love: clean, non-GMO, no vegetable oil. Any dessert that she makes, any food that she makes, period, actually, I will eat. Amber Cottle, she's incredible. And so, my birthday last year, she made me a big cake, and it was just incredible. It was really a piece of art. But yeah, so long answer again, but not that. I don't know what, I'm definitely not, I'm a little boring maybe in that way, but for me, it's actually very exotic, my food.
No, that's nothing boring at all. And like I said before, man, when you're eating clean and when you're being organic and doing what you're supposed to do, is actually, what do you miss out on? You don't miss out on anything. I mean, you're doing everything that you're supposed to do, and definitely continue to do what you're doing when you're eating in terms of with the grass-fed diet, and just continue to be clean and organic. And definitely proud of you on that. And again, thank you so much, Roxy, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us on the program.
Oh, man.
I know you've got so much going on with the podcast, and also what you're doing in fields of neuroscience, of course, with philosophy and poetry. And also, you have also made some big strides in the world of doing makeup. So tell everybody about being a makeup artist.
Well, that's my past career. So, wow, yeah, that's a whole nother, podcast, but that was where I came from. I spent a larger part of my career life as a celebrity makeup artist. So from the very bottom of the ranks to the top 1%. And then I just naturally evolved and merged into what I'm here to do, which is to be myself and to express all of what I express through the various modalities that I do, my writing, my books, my podcast, and, other digital creations that I have. So, but that was a very important and beautiful part of my journey. It literally, the skill transfer of being a freelance artist is incredible, because you have to learn, that's the perseverance, handling rejection, and always, working at your craft to become better. I mean, it's, it goes on and on. There's so many factors in that career that, still play into my career now, that absolutely support my career now. But in addition to that, it presented to me some of the most important humans in my life, my life game people, So it was a very, very big part of my life, a very special part of my life that I will always respect. But, it had its expiration date. And I knew that midway through, I knew that there was more. I knew that there was more for me. And it wasn't coming from a place of not feeling satisfied, because I was actually climbing hard at that point and very inspired to keep climbing. But we all have an inner voice. I speak about it all the time. And my intuition just kept telling me, there's more. And I never pushed myself, and I never pressured. I never, it's that curiosity that I just let kind of percolate and simmer within me. And, when podcast came into my world, one thing started to lead to another, and then it all ended up moving in, the way that it did. So, yeah, it was not even that long ago. It was just a couple of years ago when I fully exited. But it's been about a 5-year journey where, the initial evolution out started to happen. And, again, it was a very, very special experience for me for so many reasons. And I feel very fortunate that's part of my life as well.
Absolutely. And again, thank you for expounding more on your time as a celebrity makeup artist. And let's just talk now about the current. What other projects are you currently involved in, or things that you're currently working on?
Yeah, well, again, the big piece for me is writing my first book, and I know that the cascade of books come after, because I already know what these books are. So, but this first one is very important to get out first. And it's really my biggest focus right now, outside of just consistently putting more into the podcast every single week to expand the podcast in all the ways that I envision it. So, the writing my book, the podcast, a lot more stage speaking and, collaborating, paneling with others is also on the map right now. And yeah, overall, I have a digital community as well that is really special. Community is very important to me, and I very much love connecting with those who are in my community. I don't take it lightly. If you're paying attention to me, that means that because energy is everything, and in energy is our time and our attention. And so, those who are paying me their attention, and I know that I'm showing up and supporting them, but that it's that relationship is really important to me. So I really do my best to nurture my community and to, put every bit of my best effort into continuously to serve more valuable content, especially in the world of, we just have so much content, there's just so much out there. So it's really important to me, just to, and plus, I do that for me as well, but just, building community is a big piece. So yeah, writing my books, getting the books out there, taking Black Belt BD Radio to the place that I envision it, and, just being out there more, speaking and growing my community and supporting them with all my heart. This is just simplified, but really the most important pieces to really speak on.
Awesome. And again, thank you so much again for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us on the program. Tell everybody where they can find you, Roxy, on social media, as well as any websites that you would like to promote. Let the listeners know that as well.
Sure. Before I say that, I just want to say thank you. You ask incredible questions. I feel how present and curious you are, and I know as someone who, is on the other end of this as well, I know what that takes, and so I really, really appreciate this talk with you and the questions that you presented to me. So thank you very much. Where people can find me, so on Instagram, I'm really active there with my community. My Instagram handle is Roxy Look. That's an ROXY. I'm a Y Roxy. Roxy Look, and then there's also Black Belt Beauty. And then really simple, my podcast, everything, books, everything underneath me that may be interesting to anybody listening, you can find under the mothership, blackbeltbeauty.com. Podcast available on any podcast platform, including YouTube, which is really fun. You can see the live tackles and wild hair in action. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, Ed. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Anytime, you're welcome. And I thank you so much for those kind words that you had given me. I truly appreciate that. And before we let you go, Roxy, we have a lot going on in our world right now with so many distractions. People are just trying to find some place where they can hone craft or find new skills and new talents and abilities. I'll leave the floor to you on this. Can you give the listeners any words of advice or any words of encouragement of people to wanting to achieve their dreams or feel that they can't achieve their dreams due to unfortunate circumstances and they may want to try again, but they don't know where to start? The floor is yours.
Oh, man. Thank you. that's a big one, but honestly, it's kind of simple. And I'm not saying it's simple to do, but it's a simple answer. And I'm going to preface, before I give the answer, I just want to say this. I don't come from easy. I don't come from handouts. So know that with this answer that's coming, I'm about to give to you, it's not coming from the girl who had it easy. No. We had a hard upbringing. There's a lot of beautiful things, but I'm saying I take punches all the time from my life, and especially being someone who's really going for it, and someone who also is living, and this leads to the answer, but I'm doing it from my authentic self. No blueprint, not living anybody else's life or anybody's idea of what my life should be. Never have, never will. And that keeps me on the ledge of my life, ledges. But that's where everything that you need to live to your greatest self and to discover everything that's going to matter to you, that's going to create a life of fulfillment, lives. It's from your authentic self. So, and it's not easy because of the external noise or even voice, if I want to be softer about it, because sometimes the external voice can be coming from your loved ones. But if it's not truly what you want to say yes to or truly want to say no to, then you got to be brave and you got to stand in your truth, because there's a reason why you're being called towards something. There's a reason why you have that deep-seated desire, not the fickle, not I like this, but then I'm talking about that inner knowing, that calling, for me in my middle of my makeup career, and it's we have more, and journaling, I'm just going to plug it in to give a tactic, because that's what I do. Truly, It is the most profound and effective tool that will help you to first learn about your authentic self, then connect with your authentic self, and then stand in ownership and operate solely from your authentic self. You have to develop a relationship with your authentic self, and that's not going to happen just living in your head and not talking. So writing in your journal will help you do that. You don't have to be a poet. You don't have to be an author. You don't even have to have you can step to your pages, and some days you can just be like, I don't even know. I have nothing to say. Cool. Start there. And then watch what happens. Just start there. Because there's always something to say. But you need to give yourself permission to feel, to think, to be curious, to try, And so, if you're on the ground right now because you've been trying and you're like, how do I get back up? You've got to ask yourself this question that, for me, it's just one of the most potent questions. And when I share this quote, it actually went viral, but you got to ask yourself, and I say this with love, how much effort are you worth? Put it back into, how much effort are you worth? I'm going to tell you right now, that's that, Ed, when Rocky's down, and that's like a Mickey call for me, where I'm just like, get up, because it helps you develop your worth, even if you don't totally own your self-worth and feel substantial amounts of self-worth. Asking yourself that question will do much more for you than you realize. So, yeah, authentic self, operate from your authentic self. How do you get to that place? Journal. That's my number one tool. There's other ways, but that's primary. It's the most effective. Ask yourself the question when shit gets really hard, how much effort am I worth? And then see what happens.
Man, that was beautiful. Absolutely. And you heard it from her. She is RoxanneSaffaie. She is, they say, a jack of all trades, but in her case, being a woman, she is a Jill of all trades. And check her out with the Black Belt Beauty radio podcast, of course, doing her thing in the world of neuroscience, also poetry, philosophy, and a true Renaissance woman indeed. Roxy, thank you so much. And if ever you want to come back on, just feel free to let us know. Thanks again.
I will. Thank you. We'll be in touch. Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome. You're welcome. We'll be back with more right after this.
Welcome to Black Belt Beauty Radio, a podcast fueled by a passion to support your journey in developing your most beautiful and optimal performance in life. Each episode is driven with the intention to elevate your mind. When we elevate our mind, we elevate our life. So get ready. It's time to rise. Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of Black Belt Beauty Radio. Vulnerability is a really, really important emotion that every single one of us is feeling throughout our lives in many different ways. And I often, all of my work is centered in empowerment, right? Self-mastery, right? So lots of self-regulation, the self-talk, all of the content, the writing, everything is always coming with this strength, right? With a lot of courage, confidence, like that energy, right? And a lot of times, it could be interpreted from some individuals as, there's like a lack of vulnerability, right? When you're exuding a lot of strength, you are not necessarily exuding or living from a very vulnerable place.
That's going to do it for this best of edition of The Robinson Show. Till next time, everybody, remember, put God first in everything you do and you can't go wrong. Until next time, stick to the script. I'm out. Peace.